Yes, sir, to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Well, thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook on what I think is the last day of the first half of 2022. In the words of John Bon Jovi, we're halfway there. Let's find out who's going to join us and discuss the hot topics on this week's episode of Donnybrook. She's Sarah Fenske, now the executive editor of the Euclid Media Group. We welcome her, sitting in for Wendy Weiss, who's taking the week off. Mr. Bill McClellan's with us, columnist with the Post-Dispatch and STLtoday.com. He's a columnist and host with RawStory.com, the Riverfront Times, and the Big 550 KTRS, Ray Hartmann. And editor and sports columnist with the St. Louis American, Alvin Reid. I do want to point out before we begin the program that you may notice the changing artwork behind us. That's right, we're asking artists to loan us their great work on a rotating basis so that we can display the great art of St. Louis. That happens to be from Amy Firestone Rosen, who has two exhibits opening tomorrow, one at the St. Louis Artists Guild and another, Rethinking the Party Dress, at the Foundry Arts Center on Main Street in St. Charles. So we thank her for loaning that beautiful piece. And we also want to thank Joe Moskis of the Angard Arts Hotel, whose artwork was behind me all those weeks before tonight. So there you have that. Alvin Reid, last Friday, the day after our most recent Donnybrook, well, the Supreme Court did what people thought it was going to do, 6-3 vote, saying that there's no constitutional right to an abortion in the United States. And almost immediately, the Attorney General and the governor in this state of Missouri took action, and there's no abortion, no legal abortion in Missouri anymore except for medical emergencies. Mayor Tashara Jones of the city of St. Louis said that she thinks it's going to be tough to attract businesses, maybe students and others to visit our area. What do you think?
Well, I think that in a region like ours, it's like desperate to try to get anything we can to come here. And I don't mean that we're just the dregs of convention world, but it will hurt because sooner or later somebody's going to say, like, this is just too much. And I'm not taking my business or I'm not taking my convention or gathering to a state that is this draconian about what was a constitutional law until, you know, really until we learned of the leaked document, but really until Friday. So, yeah, I mean, sooner or later, there will be factual evidence that it cost us something. But our leaders of the state could care less, and that's just part of the whole sad saga.
I don't know about conventions. I feel like there are so many states that are in the same boat as Missouri right now where abortion is effectively illegal in the majority of states across this country. I do think it's going to hurt us with people wanting to move in, but on the other hand, I think these kind of politics have been hurting us for a long time. I mean, you talk to somebody who lives in California, who lives in New York, try to get them to take a job in St. Louis. That was a really hard job even before this. That ship has already sailed.
I think it can't. I think Tashara Jones is right. I mean, I think and understand, conventions are planned several years out, so it's not something likely to be felt early on. But a lot of blue states have big cities in them, and I don't. Whereas it's not like everybody's going to boycott every state just because it's red, but a state like Missouri that takes so much pride in being like the most one of the most extreme anti-choice states, I do think she's right. I think it can. We have enough problems, enough, you know, factors that this, if we had everything else going great, then it might not affect us. But on the margins,
but don't you
I think it could.
How
I think
about
she's
forget
right.
Conventions for a moment.
Well,
what
business.
About students? Don't you think a student who's living, I don't know, in Chicago or Los Angeles or wherever will think twice about going to WashU?
Well,
Yeah.
well, I think so, and it just makes us seem even a little less hip. I mean, we're not in the 21st century, and we're proud of it, and I think that it's not the major problem we have. I mean, Centene, Neerdorf always talked about hard to get people to come here because of crime. Our schools in the city aren't very good, but this is just another little thing.
I think this is a bigger problem for a place like Nashville or like Austin. Like, they were on the upsurge, and now all the companies that have relocated there from, say, California, they have a lot of explaining to do with their employees, with future hires. It's going to be really awkward to see how they
I think
finesse
that's a
this.
great point. But I'll add one thing. Ronald Reagan, whatever one thought of him, his political genius was, you run on abortion, you do not govern on it. One of his main issues in 1980 was a constitutional amendment to ban abortion. That was one of his big issues. In fact, he beat George H.W. Bush in the primary with it, and then had him as vice president. And he had 3,000 days almost in office, and it never made it to his things to do list. He knew better than to actually govern when it gets personal to people. If it's really on,
we'll find out.
I think it's a
You're
real.
right. He wasn't successful, but maybe he wanted to be
No,
and
he
wasn't.
didn't.
Maybe the
No.
heirs to Ronald Reagan are doing what he wanted
No,
to do.
he didn't.
Well, let me
I
ask you
don't
this, though,
believe
Ray.
that. I don't believe
In the St. Louis
Right.
County, the prosecutor, Wesley Bell, has said that he's not going to prosecute that abortion. So if there's right now you're not allowed to, I guess, provide or induce an abortion, except for a medical emergency. But he says he's not going to prosecute. So if that's the case, and about a sixth of the population in the state of Missouri lives in St. Louis County, for all intents and purposes, is abortion still legal in St. Louis County?
No, but I think it isn't.
I mean, de facto, if there's no prosecution.
First of all, there hasn't.
I mean, it's like marijuana.
First of all, there are no.
It's like marijuana. I mean, marijuana is illegal,
The question
but
is,
nobody
first of all,
enforces any laws.
To my knowledge, there are no abortion clinics in St. Louis County, so it's kind of moot on that point.
What about doctors' offices?
Well, and again,
I mean, they happen in hospitals. You
right?
know,
No, and
OBGYNs do them.
the answer. Well, let's face it. Abortion for people of means in private doctors' offices, or people who can get on private jets or wherever to go, sure, it's legal for them. That's one of the great fallacies of the whole movement, I guess, is that it's never been about, every woman. It's been about, it's certainly the political class has never had, is not going to ever, well.
But is everybody okay with Wesley Bell's decision?
Go ahead.
I am. I mean, we had the Post-Dispatch had an editorial saying that this is, not up to the prosecutors, and even though he's right on the merits of the issue, this is wrong, and I disagree with that. I think that the Wesley Bell is making the right call on this, and
prosecutors always have to use their discretion. They don't have time
Right.
to prosecute every single thing that all of us are out there doing, breaking the law. I mean, look at St. Louis City. Like, they haven't enforced traffic laws there for years, even when, like, you see very serious things happen. I guarantee, even though she hasn't issued a statement on this yet, Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner is not going to be prosecuting abortions there either. She can't figure out how to get her head around the basic parts of the job, much less cases like
And the
that.
good thing is, even if she did prosecute, she wouldn't get a conviction, probably.
Well, now,
But hey, in this case, this is...
Let's give her a 1-week break. Well, maybe she's, coming out with that. But I think, you mentioned they don't enforce traffic laws. I think that's a problem. And I agree with the Post-Dispatch to some extent, because I'm kind of tired of sheriffs in the state of Missouri who say they're not going to enforce federal gun laws, or others who say they're not going to enforce marijuana laws or immigration laws. So isn't it up to the General Assembly or the legislature to create the laws, and the prosecutor's supposed to prosecute them, and then of course, police are supposed to enforce them?
But then why do we elect positions like sheriff and DA? If that was all just supposed to be a machine, that could be an appointed thing from on high. This is the local people get to weigh in on what they want. St. Louis County doesn't want
And
people
let me ask you
prosecuted for this.
Excuse me. Does the liberal Post-Dispatch want maybe Wesley Bell to have investigators go out and look into every miscarriage too while we're at it? Because theoretically, if
No,
you...
and I can answer that, right? No, of course, the Liberal Post-Dispatch does not
Well, this
want
isn't very liberal, this one. But I mean, my point is, of course, you can't. Do you think that Wesley Bell should investigate miscarriages then? I mean, as part of this? I mean,
I do not.
Okay.
But I think that there's a trend now where laws aren't being enforced across the
Well,
land.
this
I mean,
one-
did you feel good about the state not enforcing federal gun laws?
No, I don't.
I
But I
don't.
will say this. This is different. And look, I'm trying to be nice for my 61 years. And, like, there are a lot of people out there like me who have done everything that society has asked us. I cannot speak for other, genders, or I cannot speak for other races. But I could tell you, just as me, this is too far. This has gone too far. And anybody who wants to stand up and say, like, I no, I'm not in. I salute them. And just enough people are just going to have to just say, like, this is ridiculous. So, okay.
Okay. And Bill,
Well stated.
what about the abortion fund that the mayor, or at least an aldermanic panel in the city of St. Louis is establishing with federal dollars that'll help women not so much pay for the abortion itself, but provide for transportation or doulas or child care? And the same thing is happening in St. Louis County. Sam Page, the county executive, said he's going to $1 million of federal money from the American Recovery Act.
Well, I think it's a gesture is all it is. That, you know, the mayor and the county executive want to show that they are against what the Supreme Court has done, and this is the only way they can show it. I don't think it really has an effect. I mean, I don't think that people from St. Louis or St. Louis County have a difficult time getting to Illinois. I mean, they go to Illinois to buy pot. In the old days when you couldn't buy liquor here on Sunday, I'd see a whole bunch of Missouri license plates in the liquor store lots where we'd be buying liquor because we'd run out on Saturday night. So I don't think that there's a real need to help people get over there, but it's a nice gesture and I applaud them.
I think there's probably a need to help people get over there, but not the constituencies of St. Louis City and St. Louis County. I mean, we have a women say in Springfield,
that's what
this
I mean.
really.
Of course.
But what's interesting, I guess the ironic thing is, St. Louis is going to have better access to abortion than many other big cities all over the country right now. And this is certainly going to give us a black eye that we're in Missouri where abortion's been banned, but we can drive for 25 minutes. It's like getting to the suburbs. Right. And there's, you know, people are going to be flying into St. Louis to get their abortions. That's the irony of what's happening.
They already are.
Yeah,
Well,
we're a destination.
Yeah. And I think, I can't say it as well as Alvin just did, but there's a sense, and I agree that it's mostly a gesture, but a good one. And it's sort of like it's on. I mean, this is getting personal now because they can take all the polls about Roe v. Wade and throw them out. If you're talking about this actually getting into people's households where their daughter, their sister, their wife, whatever, is affected by this in real life, you could throw all the polls out. There are very few Americans that want their government at any level in their world telling them, making this decision. And by bringing this out of the theoretical into real life, I think they've created themselves a little monster.
And time to maybe make a little program note that you and I at half past will talk to Mallory Schwartz from Pro-Choice Missouri, along with Sam Lee from Campaign Life Missouri, and that's on next up halfway through this program. Sarah, I want to ask you about another strange thing happening in St. Louis County. This time, the Chief of Staff for County Executive Sam Page, Cal Harris, who's only been on the job for about 6 months. He's been in the news recently because he has expired license plates, and so there's that. But now, apparently, he was part of a sex video which was recorded in the offices of county government. And now, I guess the woman who's also part of it is suing him or taking some sort of legal action. I guess there's a question, okay, if you are part of a sex tape in an office with somebody, how much of responsibility do you bear? But nonetheless, does it seem to you like St. Louis County is drawing a lot of weirdos and losers to its employment roles?
Yeah, I mean, either Sam Page is doing a terrible job hiring people or this man just cannot catch a break. And in this particular case, I gotta say, this guy comes in with like a very good resume. You know, he's one of these trailing spouses. His wife got a great job working for Centene. They found him a local job. He's a local guy, has a good track record of having been a campaign strategist and a lobbyist, comes on as chief of staff. They end up expanding his portfolio. He used to be one of 3 people that you would go to get to Sam Page. They ended up making him the one guy. So it sounds like he was doing a pretty good job. I don't know that the county executive could have foreseen that he was going to have sex, allegedly, in an office with someone who says she did not know she was being videotaped. I mean, that's a really bad break. I don't think there's any way you can vet a person to say, will you do this or not? I imagine the answer for all of us would be no.
When the buck stops with you, and those who've had it, the buck stops with you. And I agree that you can't, it's not his fault, obviously, in this particular case. It wasn't his fault necessarily in the case of the guy at the jail that just, ripped off the,
I kind of thought that was his fault.
Well, no, it was. I mean, well, it was. But the point is, the buck does stop with an executive. His job is to run the government. I think at this point there's real question about whether he has, frankly, the capabilities or the background for that kind of role. That doesn't mean he's a bad guy. He was obviously probably a fine anesthesiologist, but there's a different skill set into running a large organization. And sure, I think he's got it in the totality. And I guess to paraphrase, are you tired of losing? Today, it just came out that he lost the Tim Fitch won his pension case against him. I mean, he's had a run of losing.
But it's not just
that is
him.
just unbelievable.
It's been going on in St. Louis County for some time.
That's what I was going to
I
say.
mean, we had Mark Tucker. I don't know who appointed him.
Well, that was him. That was Page.
He
was
audit.
Page's main
Okay,
guy.
how about Sheila Sweeney?
Yeah, that wasn't
who
Page. That
had
was
never,
Stenger.
you know,
That was Stenger.
she was in charge of economic development, but had never
Yeah,
done that before
that
in her
was for
life.
Stenger.
How about Lou Abusi, who was getting a
was
job
Stenger.
after he left Bill Clay's office, and he ended up inspecting parks twice a day. Or Pat Dolan, who lost his job as a county councilman, so he got a job at the Parks Department. And the list goes on and on. There's a lot. Not to mention, as you point out, Tony Weaver and others.
Right. And then, like, well, we had talked about this before, how, you know, all the time I grew up, really till the last, like, 10 years, if you went to a city council meeting, it was you and some crickets. And St. Louis was the show, you know, and it just went 180.
Right.
And so it's all part of it. I mean, like, golly, county used to have this, what is going on?
The names you mentioned, Stenger owned those. I mean, he did own them. And when you're the county executive, whether you're mayor or whatever, if you have enough of these, you do own it.
Okay,
I mean,
but
I'm sorry.
Bill, what do you think of Sam Page not debating Jane Duker and Richard Callow, who is a political advisor for County Executive Sam Page, was asked when will the county executive debate his primary opponent? And Callow responded, well, when will hell freeze over?
Well, first of all, I would not want to debate Jane Duker myself. Jane is smart and she's vicious, but I'm not running for county executive. And I think that Sam Page owes it to the voters to get on the stage with Jane Duker and let her beat him up for a while and see if he can, you know, exit with any dignity left at all. But, you know, I think you have to be willing to debate your opponent. And, you know, as scared as he must be of Jane Duker, I still think he owes it to the voters to get up there on the stage and try to duke it out with Jane Duker. Like I say, I hope this doesn't offend Jane Duker, because I don't read tweets, but I have people say to me, well, she tweeted about me. And I go, oh, it's not good, Bill. It's terrible. So,
but I have to tell you, this is a fight. If this were a fight, it wouldn't last. It would be like one of Tyson's early fights. It would just be over in a hurry. Jane Duker would just crush Sam Page in a debate. I kind of like Richard's statement only because it was so obvious when he said it was with health freezes over. It was kind of like, well, at least he dispensed with any suspense. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if he's the county executive, he owes it to the people, regardless of his party, his anything. And that goes for everybody. You owe it to make yourself accessible when you have a significant opponent, which she is. And it's really, again, it's the kind of thing that's
and it's
not
Congress
helping
people too. I mean,
right.
You know, of course you should debate an opponent.
And you could do it at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday at the Champ City Hall,
but
right?
the
I mean,
reason-
But then she'll tweet about it. I mean, this is
And there'd be videos. I mean, it
Debate
wouldn't
is
be pretty.
not Sam Page's medium. And I do have to give Richard Callow credit here. I hate when people try to pretend, oh, we're really eager to debate, and then they're just never actually available.
Well, I would have I could come up with a strategy. All right. Now, this is like you said, hey, Mike Tyson is going to knock me out. But I think, well, what do I do? I said, like, you just got to get some quick jabs in, and then that's it, and then just keep moving. I mean, like, no matter what she said, I would just, like, I'd have three answers. I'd have three answers. Whatever she said, I'd say Steve Stenger. And then I'd say, she likes the police. All right, and I probably would, like, could you see Sam Page saying police? But I would. I said she likes the police. All right, and I'd find one more, and that would be it. I don't care whatever it was. That's all I would say.
I do want to say something, though, about Sam Page. I think he's an intelligent guy. I think he's kind of an introvert and doesn't come across as high energy. And I do think sometimes in society we undervalue the introverts.
No, I agree with you 100%. I do.
You know, the issue we tend to make our opponents so bad. The question is, does he have the skills to be a county executive? Being an introvert is arguably not one of them.
I don't know.
Okay,
Well,
I mean, really, it isn't.
you may
to
be
be
right.
a public
Well,
official.
you may be
besides,
right.
he would get to make an opening statement and a closing statement, and in the middle, I mean, he
leave
would
me
get.
alone.
Yeah, you know, he could do whatever.
I'm telling you, that's all.
What about Mary Miller? Over the weekend, she was blasted by the media because she misspoke. She was trying to say she stood up for the right to life. Instead, she said she was standing up for white life. But she had something going for her in Illinois' 15th Congressional District, and that is that Donald Trump endorsed her. And so she whooped Rodney Davis, the longtime incumbent. She got 57% of the vote. Now, did Donald Trump help her? Did that gaffe help her?
I don't think this is Trump. That is that redrawn district. They put a guy who had to like play it very down the middle because he was in one of the rare districts that could go either way. Rodney Davis tries to walk this tightrope for years. All of a sudden, he's thrust in a district with a crazy Trump lover. Pardon my use of crazy. It was her race to lose. The Trump endorsement did not make or break that. I also think the gaffe didn't make or break that. That's the kind of gaffe that like media people love, people who spend too much time on Twitter. I'm one of them. We find this stuff hilarious. The average voter is like, I'm sure she meant to say right to life. I would believe it if she hadn't quoted Hitler approvingly a few months before.
That's
weird.
what I was just going to say. I mean, she is part of a very frightening group of people that are hijacking your father's Republican Party. Rodney, I have to say,
She got 57% of the vote.
I get no.
She's not hijacking anybody.
No,
they voted
are
freely for her.
They,
and you don't want to know something?
Right.
She doesn't even live in the Congressional District.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
she lives outside of it.
And I've always known that.
There was a time when if a politician quoted Hitler favorably in
over.
any way,
It was over.
that would be sort of the end of the politician. But in today's
that's right.
Republican Party, people go, well, you know.
And I do think Trump's endorsement helped her. I agree with you. The gaffe didn't make any difference. I mean, if that gaffe would hit, what a gaffe would Hitler. I mean, I agree with you. The gaffe didn't make any difference. Trump's endorsement matters a lot in dark, red, bright red, whatever word you want to use, solid red districts like this. And poor Rodney Davis, who is basically somebody I would disagree with most or all the time, but basically a decent guy who's, trying to, and I'll tell you what, it's
But this
why
is exactly
why so many Republicans are just heading for the hills, the normal ones.
This is what the Democrats in Springfield wanted. They created this district with, we're getting rid of you, Rodney.
They did.
That's right. And now, it could have worked out perfectly.
Right.
They're still like, oh, okay.
They got rid of Adam
Well,
Kinzinger, too.
that's why, truly, whether it's Missouri or Illinois, a computer should come up with the
I agree.
I agree with you, too.
Okay, let me ask you, Alvin, about a sad situation. 13-year-old boy was driving a family automobile, ostensibly without the permission of the parents, and he was going 80, 90 miles an hour in North County. He crashed into a tree, and two of his passengers, actually 3 of them died. 2 were 13, and 1 was 9 years old. Now, he's been charged with manslaughter. Do you think that's the end of that?
Well, I don't think it should be, in that at 13 years old, I don't know if you now would go to, juvenile, and 4 years from now, see ya, and then you're really, no one knows that this happened because it wouldn't be on record. We may not ever find out what his name is, not for a while anyway. I just think there's got to be some way a parent has got to be held responsible for this. And I know that kind of violates a lot of tenets, but I mean, there are just some things that life loss, it just can't be on a 13-year-old because you're not an adult. And your brain is not working as an adult, but there's an adult somewhere that says like you shouldn't be out driving a car illegally at 1:30 in the morning. You're 13 years old. You shouldn't be doing it any time. But so I think society's got to find a way.
And of course, the kids that were with him, one could say the same thing about their parents, Alvin.
Well, yes, yeah.
These were even younger kids out at 1:30 at night riding around. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
It's-
13-year-olds know how to sneak out of the house and steal mom and dad's keys, and like cars aren't like guns in some key ways. Like you don't store your car keys in a lockbox, and so this is a terrible tragedy. I mean, it's just an awful story, but it's hard to think how holding the parents responsible for this makes anybody whole.
I hear you. It's just that, but somebody has got to be responsible for the life other than the 13-year-old. I feel that way.
I agree with the sentiment. I think it would be tough, and I think some states may have different laws than other states on this. I just, before we came on, was looking at it. I think you'd have to be very careful about how you crafted a law like this, because establishing true negligence on the part of the parents would be, because a lot of times there's not even two parents, and sometimes there's not even one parent that's raising the kids, and so it's a tricky law to write.
I
agree with the sentiment.
And
I agree with the spirit.
with you.
It's
How
a
you get there,
very
I don't
hard
know.
I will tell
it'd be
you,
a hard law to write, but I agree with the spirit of what
You're
Alvin
not
said.
going to believe it. I grew up in suburban Cleveland, and the kids in my neighborhood, Mark and Terry, I'll save the last name, they were driving cars at age 12 or 13, and there, but for the grace of God, went them.
I hear you.
So it's
Now,
not all that new.
Would a grand jury hear it and then they could decide? Is this so bad that we now charge parents?
We're going to have to end on that thought as we go to the old mailbag and see what people thought about last week's program. Sherry LeCain wrote, "Thanks, Alvin, for your on-point observations regarding Eric Greitens' campaign messages, past and present. Anyone who hunts people who don't share his views, including his own party members, is clearly misrepresenting true leadership." Thank you, Ms. LeCain. On last week's episode, I heard an interesting discussion about Kansas City having surpassed St. Louis in terms of how its region functions and really has it going on right now. Well, one reason for that, I believe, is because Kansas City has a city manager, just like Austin, Dallas, Phoenix, and other cities very much growing and attracting new business. That from Benjamin DeClue, and we thank Benjamin for that. You can write us care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, 63108. Don't forget those emails, Donnybrook@9pbs.org, and we love those tweets. Remember, hashtag DonnybrookSTL. You can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast source, and that would be Spotify, Apple, Google Play, or TuneIn. Thank you so much to Sarah Fenske for sitting in for Wendy, who will be back next week at this time. Don't go away, because not Alvin, but Ray and I will talk to two sides of the abortion issue on Next Up. That's next. Thank you so much.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.